Welcome to World History TV. We're set to embark on an incredible journey through time. From ancient civilizations to modern-day events, we explore stories that have shaped our world. Our rich tapestry of human experience offers countless lessons and fascinating insights. Whether you're a history buff or simply curious about the past, you've come to the right place. Grab your passport to the past. We're delving into defining moments of our history. Together, we'll uncover the events and personalities that made today possible. Join us as we discover the moments that define us on World History TV. The history of the United States is a tale of exploration, conflict, struggle, triumph, and transformation. From the early days of Native American civilizations to the modern world power it is today, the United States has played a crucial role on the global stage. Let's embark on this journey, starting with the earliest days of America. Part 1. The early days, pre-colonial and colonial America. Before the arrival of Europeans, the Americas were home to a variety of Native American cultures, from the Iroquois in the northeast to the Cherokee in the southeast and the Apache in the southwest. These indigenous peoples lived in harmony with the land for thousands of years, developing rich traditions, languages, and governments. The story of modern America begins in 1492 when Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer sailing under the Spanish flag, reached the shores of the New World. Following Columbus, European powers like Spain, France, and England began exploring and establishing colonies along the eastern seaboard of North America. In 1607, the first permanent English settlement was founded at Jamestown, Virginia. By the early 18th century, 13 British colonies had been established, thriving on agriculture, trade, and growing self-reliance. Part 2: Revolution and Independence. By the mid-1700s, tensions were mounting between the American colonies and Great Britain. The colonists, frustrated by taxation without representation and British control, started to demand independence. In 1775, the American Revolution began with the first shots fired at Lexington and Concord. 1 year later, on July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress declared independence, and Thomas Jefferson's words echoed through history in the Declaration of Independence. After several years of struggle, and with the help of the French, the colonies secured their freedom with the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783. The new nation, the United States of America, was born. Part 3: Nation Building and Expansion. In the years that followed, the fledgling nation faced the challenge of building a stable government. In 1787, the United States Constitution was written, establishing a democratic republic with a system of checks and balances. During the 19th century, America began to expand westward, fulfilling what many called its manifest destiny. This belief that the United States was destined to stretch from coast to coast drove the country to acquire vast territories through purchase, war, and treaties. Key events during this period include the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the annexation of Texas in 1845, and the California Gold Rush of 1848, which spurred massive migration westward. However, this rapid expansion came at a great cost to Native American populations, who were forcibly removed from their lands. Part 4: Civil War and Reconstruction. As the United States grew, so did tensions between the northern and southern states, primarily over the issue of slavery. In 1861, these tensions boiled over into a bloody conflict known as the American Civil War. Led by President Abraham Lincoln, the Union sought to preserve the nation and end the practice of slavery. The Southern Confederacy, however, fought to maintain their independence and their economic system, which was heavily reliant on enslaved labor. After 4 years of intense warfare, the Union emerged victorious in 1865. The Civil War resulted in the abolition of slavery, but the South lay in ruins, and the nation had to undergo a difficult period of reconstruction. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution sought to guarantee freedom and civil rights to African Americans, but real equality would take much longer to achieve. Part 5, The Industrial Revolution and World Wars. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States underwent rapid industrialization. Railroads crisscrossed the country, factories sprang up in cities, and immigrants from Europe poured into the country, seeking opportunity. The early 20th century also saw the United States take a larger role on the world stage. In 1917, America entered World War I, helping to tip the balance in favor of the Allies. After the war, the country experienced a period of prosperity during the 1920s, but this was followed by the Great Depression of the 1930s. In 1941, after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States entered World War II. American forces fought on two fronts, Europe and the Pacific, and were crucial in defeating Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. The war ended in 1945 with the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the U.S. emerged as a global superpower. Part 6, The Cold War and Civil Rights. The post-World War II era saw the United States locked in a tense Cold War with the Soviet Union. The two superpowers engaged in a nuclear arms race, space race, and proxy wars around the globe, but they never directly fought each other. During this time, America also saw significant social change. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., sought to end segregation and racial discrimination. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, marking a major victory for equality. The Vietnam War, which lasted from the 1960s to the 1970s, was deeply controversial and led to widespread protests. The United States' eventual withdrawal from Vietnam in 1975 marked the end of its direct military involvement in Southeast Asia. Part 7, The End of the Cold War and the Rise of Globalization, 1990s. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War, a decades-long geopolitical rivalry between the United States and the USSR. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the United States emerged as the world's sole superpower. This period was marked by a shift towards economic and cultural globalization, as free market capitalism expanded across the globe. Under President Bill Clinton's administration in the 1990s, the United States saw a booming economy, driven by the rise of the tech sector and the dot-com boom. The signing of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, in 1994 created a trilateral trade bloc between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, further integrating North American economies. However, this decade was not without challenges. The U.S. saw its first major terrorist attack on domestic soil in 1993, when the World Trade Center was bombed by Islamic extremists. This event foreshadowed the growing threat of international terrorism in the 21st century. Socially, the 1990s also saw significant shifts, with the rise of the Internet and the acceleration of information technology fundamentally changing the way Americans communicated, worked, and lived. Part 8, The September 11th Attacks and the War on Terror, 2001 to 2010. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the world watched in horror as the United States was attacked by the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. For coordinated attacks, including the destruction of the World Trade Center towers in New York City, shook the nation to its core, leaving nearly 3,000 people dead. The 9/11 attacks were a pivotal moment in American history, leading to the launch of the War on Terror. Under President George W. Bush, the United States invaded Afghanistan in 2001, targeting Al-Qaeda and the Taliban regime that had sheltered them. 2 years later, in 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq, based on claims that Saddam Hussein's regime possessed weapons of mass destruction, a claim that would later prove controversial. The early 2000s were marked by a sense of insecurity and heightened nationalism, as the country grappled with the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East. Domestically, the government passed the Patriot Act, expanding surveillance capabilities in the name of national security, but raising concerns over civil liberties. Part 9, The Financial Crisis and the Obama Era, 2008 to 2016. In 2008, the United States faced the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. The housing market collapsed, leading to a global financial crisis that resulted in millions of Americans losing their jobs and homes. The stock market plummeted, and several major financial institutions were on the brink of failure. Amidst this crisis, Barack Obama was elected as the 44th President of the United States. His victory was historic, as he became the first African American to hold the office. His administration quickly enacted measures to stabilize the economy, including the passage of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act and the controversial bailout of the auto and banking industries. One of Obama's signature achievements was the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, which aimed to expand healthcare coverage to millions of uninsured Americans. However, this legislation was met with fierce opposition, sparking political polarization that would intensify in the years to come. Internationally, Obama oversaw the end of combat operations in Iraq and ordered the mission that resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden in 2011, a significant moment in the fight against terrorism. Part 10, Political Polarization and the Rise of Populism, 2016 to 2020. The 2016 presidential election marked another major turning point in American history. Donald Trump, a businessman and television personality with no prior political experience, won a surprise victory over former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. His populist, nationalist rhetoric resonated with many voters who felt left behind by globalization and economic inequality. Trump's presidency was marked by a shift towards isolationism, characterized by his "America First" policy. His administration withdrew from international agreements like the Paris Climate Accord and the Iran nuclear deal, renegotiated trade deals, and imposed tariffs on foreign goods. Domestically, Trump faced intense scrutiny over his handling of immigration, with his administration implementing controversial policies like family separations at the U.S.-Mexico border. His presidency deepened political divisions in the country, as debates over race, immigration, and economic policy became more heated. In 2020, the United States faced a series of unprecedented challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic swept across the globe, causing widespread illness, death, and economic turmoil. By the end of the year, over 300,000 Americans had died from the virus, and the country was grappling with the economic fallout of lockdowns and business closures. The 2020 election, held during the pandemic, saw an extraordinary voter turnout. Joe Biden, former vice president under Obama, won the election, promising to heal the divisions in the country and lead the recovery from the pandemic. Part 11, COVID-19, Social Movements, and Climate Change, 2020's Present. The 2020s have been defined by rapid change and the continuing struggle for justice, equality, and sustainability. As the COVID-19 pandemic reshaped daily life, the U.S. government embarked on massive vaccination campaigns, with the Biden administration focusing on pandemic relief and economic recovery. At the same time, the murder of George Floyd in 2020 ignited nationwide protests against racial injustice and police brutality. The Black Lives Matter movement, which had been growing for years, surged to the forefront of American consciousness, demanding systemic reforms to address inequality. As of the mid-2020s, the United States continues to grapple with these pressing challenges, navigating economic recovery, social justice, and its role in the global order. With technology advancing at a breakneck pace, new opportunities and challenges emerge, from artificial intelligence to space exploration. The history of the United States is one of transformation, struggle, and resilience. From its early days as a land inhabited by indigenous peoples, to its colonization and eventual fight for independence, America has always been a nation shaped by its ideals of freedom and opportunity. In the 19th century, the country expanded rapidly westward, but this growth came with painful costs: conflict with Native Americans, a brutal civil war over slavery, and the long process of Reconstruction. The Industrial Revolution propelled the United States onto the global stage, transforming it into an economic powerhouse. The 20th century brought new challenges: 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the Cold War. Yet through these trials, America emerged as a global leader, committed to democracy and innovation. At the same time, social movements, particularly the civil rights movement, highlighted the need for the nation to live up to its promises of equality for all its citizens. The 21st century has tested America in new ways. The 9/11 attacks, the Great Recession, and the ongoing struggle with racial injustice have shown that the nation's journey is far from over. The COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and political polarization continue to challenge the country's unity and its role in the world. But through it all, the core of America's identity has remained: a belief in the power of democracy, the value of individual freedom, and the possibility of progress. As the United States looks to the future, it faces complex questions about inequality, justice, technology, and the environment. These are issues that will shape the next chapters of its story. The American journey has never been a straight path. It is filled with triumphs and setbacks, but it is always moving forward. The future will bring new opportunities and new challenges, but the United States has shown, time and again, that it can evolve and rise to meet them. The American journey has never been a straight path. It is filled with triumphs and setbacks, but it is always moving forward. The future will bring new opportunities and new challenges, but the United States has shown, time and again, that it can evolve and rise to meet them. As the country faces the complex realities of the 21st century, its resilience will be tested in unprecedented ways. Climate change, political polarization, economic inequality, and the rise of new global powers have created a landscape of uncertainty. These are not simply problems to be solved, but ongoing challenges that will shape the nation's identity and influence the lives of future generations. Despite the gravity of these issues, America's history suggests that it will continue to adapt and thrive, driven by a spirit of innovation, optimism, and a relentless belief in the possibility of progress. Throughout its history, the United States has weathered wars, economic depressions, civil unrest. The diversity of its people, the strength of its institutions, and the values embedded in its democratic traditions give the nation a unique ability to confront its challenges head-on. However, the path forward requires more than resilience. It demands a collective effort to address deep-seated issues that have long divided the nation. Racial inequality, gender disparities, and access to resources remain central to the American experience, and these issues will only become more pressing as the population grows more diverse and interconnected. The future of the United States lies not only in its ability to navigate global challenges but also in how it nurtures unity and inclusion at home. It is a delicate balance, one that requires bridging the gap between the promise of the American dream and the reality of those who feel left behind. Yet if history is any indication, America's journey will continue to be marked by progress and reinvention, building a future that reflects the hopes and dreams of all its citizens.